Okay, everybody, we are back. Hope you enjoyed that little tidbit of information. You know, sometimes I'm serious about it. Most of the time I'm not. It's trivial information. But I like the stories. I like the stories about the foods that are named after people or animals. I like the stories about whose ghost is haunting what house. I like the stories of, some of the people from the past, famous celebrities, and the things you don't know about them. And moving on. Anyway, we're here. I want to thank Orlando. Remember to go to bocablackbox.com. He'll be there Friday night. You can get tickets for it. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Spanglish type of stand-up comedy. Spanish and English, so just check him out. He's a very funny guy. A lot of people call him the Hispanic Jay Leno, so we'll check that out. With me now, got a friend of mine who is down in South Florida for Art Basel, and I guess the best way to introduce him would just say welcome to the Maverick Artist Victor Hugo. How the heck are you, man?
Good. Thanks for having me back. It's always fun to be here with you.
All right, let me make sure I got that. Oh, you know what? You turned this around the wrong way. That's why I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
There we go.
Testing.
Oh,
1, 2, 3.
There you go.
Is there anybody out there?
Yeah. Oh, they're out there. So again, welcome, and you're down for Art Basel.
Yes. Art Basel 2017.
Right now, you were in the studio at the beginning of the week on your trip down from St. Augustine or Daytona, wherever.
Yes, I came here for Art Basel. I visited you before any of the events, and
right.
I've been hitting a lot of the events, and I'm noticing.
How did it start off? Thursday? Was it Thursday?
It started off Tuesday.
I had the tea.
That's okay. And I've noticed the art. First, the weather's been great. That's been
welcome to South Florida.
The best part of this whole thing.
Right.
And the people have been fantastic, just so welcoming. And I've noticed the art has gone in the direction of being chaotic.
Yeah.
Life
has become chaotic.
It's very negative.
Art imitates life.
It is, and I'm noticing the beautiful chaos is what's coming out. There's a lot of
gruesome. You're not seeing the tranquil lake scenes or anything?
No. I'm noticing there's a lot of despair in the art.
People with Don King kind of hair.
There's gruesomeness in the art. There's a lot of morbidity in it.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is that I always figured when you buy something, you want it to be comforting and beautiful in your house. When you get home at night after a hard day, you want to see something that soothes you. Yeah,
but you know what? There are people out there that like just that opposite. It may soothe them, but that's what they like. They like that. What was the artist's name? Gore? Something. He used to do all these horror cartoons.
The guy who did the work for Aliens?
I don't remember. But I think his last name was Gore, G-O-R-E.
Okay.
Not Vice President, and not Al Gore. But all his artwork had that real dark horror feel to it.
There is beauty in that, and
it was pretty cool.
It's interesting because it's the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. So I see the attraction in that, and I guess that's a nice segue for what I do with my work with the graphic novel that I have. I deal with the yin and the yang, the dark side of matter. Yeah,
the interesting thing is saying it's been around probably a lot longer than we've been around. Truth is stranger than fiction. And artists like yourself with a message, all right? Because you have a message. That's got to be like a feeding frenzy for you.
It is.
I mean, I know you call your book.
It's Modern Art Gonzo Journalism.
Let's see,
and it's based on the Crackhead Jesus series, which is a actual trial that took place in Florida, known as the Crackhead Jesus trials.
Right.
And what I've done with my artwork is I've created a storyboard for most people who can't read.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and this isn't an insult, but we're living in a society that is so as advanced as it is. Yeah. There's a lot of illiterate people. There's a lot of people who are believing the fake news. We're living in a time when public trust in news media is at an all-time low.
Well, you call it the lied to generation, right?
For good reason. Yeah. But the awakening is happening now. Yeah. And I think artists, as in all of history, are the real progressives in this movement of the awakening, because they are showing in colors and in music and in films, although the film industry right now is suffering too, because they're just redoing all these movies now, and it's the same topic, and from what I've heard, people are bored.
You know what? I agree with you. I do a lot with the film industry, and I really have an affinity for independent film because they don't have the restraints that big business and politics have on those big studios. And unfortunately, there's a lack of creativity coming out of the studios. I mean, granted, you could make 150 sequels, comic book superheroes, and you could do remakes. What's out now? Murder on the Orient Express.
I remember seeing that.
Right.
It's like a 6-year-old.
It's like, well, maybe there's nothing really around to see. Maybe I'll go see it. I know the story. I know how it ends.
Yeah.
It's not a documentary. And they're just remaking things. And they're using, and I think, like you said, the awakening part, that wheel has turned, where people were going to the theater, to the big screen and the 3D screen because of the computer-generated animation, the computer graphics. People seem to be getting back to more of character and dialogue driven.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I feel as an artist and as a businessman that we're in a golden age, precisely because of what you said. The independent artists right now are rising.
Yes.
And the reason why we're rising is because technology is manufacturing equipment that is so advanced that just with a phone and with a couple of $100, you can produce a motion picture that before would have required multi-million dollars. So, and the other nice thing about that is that it doesn't stifle the artist. So there is so much out there now with the internet. As an artist that's cutting edge, though, I'm definitely warning the public, and I've been warning for a while, but now it's really being seen clearly. There's a lot of censorship now, more than I've ever experienced in my life. So if you do intend on pushing the envelope, expect to fight a battle and expect to really be in it for a while.
And it's pretty interesting because you do have the internet and you can pick up broadcasts from all over the world. It's interesting to watch even the BBC in other countries, even if it's state news, forget the slant. Is it slanted the way they want it or not? But they're bringing up stories that you don't even hear about here. I mean, whether it gets brushed under the table or, whatever the reason is, there are stories. Right now I'm big on the phrase, wag the dog. I've got this going on and it's really putting me in a bad spotlight. Let me create an incident to take you off of me and put you on there. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying our current president is the only one who ever did that. They've all done it. And
doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right. None of it makes it right. But for those of you who out there who are listening to us talk and saying, what the hell are these idiots talking about? Crackhead Jesus is nothing religious.
No.
Right.
As a matter of fact, here's the definition of it. It's on the back cover of the
Crackhead Jesus. It is a noun, people. It is an obnoxious person, a jerk, a person who indulges in hypocrisy, a person or force seen as opposing Christ, an antichrist. Basically, it's the
it's the opposite of good.
Yeah,
it's evil.
Exactly.
And so I don't know if how familiar you and your audience are with the CERN project.
Yeah,
That's where they're trying to locate. Well, they've already located the God particle by splitting the atom.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I was a child back in Southampton, New York, I got invited to. It was called the Genius Camp, Yeah. And at the time, I didn't know.
They invited you?
They invited me. I was like the dumbest of the smart guys.
For Apple, that's why.
But it was amazing because I was being taught by Nobel laureates and chess masters and stuff. Yeah. And they were brilliant because they were working on this atom smashing project. And they had all these people from all over the world asking us kids in an auditorium about our fresh ideas in approaching this problem at the time. Of course, we were 13 years old, so we didn't really understand what they were talking about, but that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted these fresh ideas.
Right.
And as a child, really nothing is impossible. So anyway, who knows if they used any of our concepts, but eventually, I think it was a year ago, they did in fact smash the atom and find the God particle. Now, the interesting thing about that is they found out that there's dark matter and that there's more dark matter than matter. So even the most biggest skeptics and atheists and just nihilists are realizing that there is a higher power, because otherwise we shouldn't even be here.
Right.
Now, what's interesting about that is when you bring dark matter into this world, it's another dimension. And so now we're dealing with quantum physics and stuff. But supposedly they took some of this dark matter material, which is so minuscule. You got to understand it. Like what would fit in a thimble is enough to destroy the Earth 10 times over. So it's very dangerous stuff. Anyway, allegedly what ends up happening in these dark particles is that energy, bad energy, comes and attaches itself to that particle. So when they put it at this university, which was undisclosed because they didn't want people knowing where this dangerous stuff was, they noticed an uptick in violent behavior, in people having nightmares. And so they had to take it out of that university. I don't know where it's stored now. But the people that are working on this project are also experiencing visions and horrors and having trouble sleeping, because apparently what they're doing is they're going so deep into our ancestry, into the real primal stages when we were just, you know, the beast that lives in us all. And that's what I deal with in this graphic novel series. Is I call it the beautiful chaos. And so I shed light on the darkness. And it's a topic that we don't like to deal with because it's horrific. You know, we don't like that dark side, but it exists and we have to talk about it.
All right. Let's move on. You started out, you grew up in New York. Not that when I actually
love it.
Right near,
yeah,
we were neighboring towns.
Big city boy.
Big city boy. You went into the Naval Academy, into the Navy?
I was accepted by Congressman Gary L. Ackerman from New York, and I was nominated as a Naval Academy midshipman. I spent 2 years there, and then I witnessed a sexual assault on a female midshipman there.
Yeah.
And I had my life threatened because I was told if I talked about her or said anything that I would be killed. Anyway,
Harvey Weinstein wasn't in the academy.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned this Harvey Weinstein thing, because when the press contacted me about this, it was all over the newspapers, Washington Post, New York Times, Miami Herald, because it was a big scandal. Somebody must have come in from the government and told them, hey, listen, you need to, like you said, squash this story, wag the tail, bread and circus, whatever you want to do. Because the story went from being about sexual assault and midshipmen being led by toxic leadership, like Harvey Weinstein and all these, you know, the abuse of power. And instead they turned it into a story that was much less about hazing and name calling and stuff. There's a big difference between words and actions.
It's like dropping the murder one rap and giving you a vehicular manslaughter.
Yeah.
You know?
So that was the first time in my life that I realized that you couldn't believe everything you read in the press.
All right. And people, you got to understand, when I first met Victor, what, 8, 9, 10?
It's been about 10 years now,
10 years. I'm hearing the story about him being a naval cadet, and he's got a ponytail. I don't know, is it down below your shoulder?
I'm also in film, so I have to change my look around. Sometimes I'm playing a cop, sometimes I'm a detective, sometimes I'm a bum on the street.
So it was like
my look changes.
I knew a comic. He was a real stoner. He was like the 420 comic.
I'm not surprised.
And he was telling me he used to play for the Detroit Red Wings. And I'm going, man, I mean, what were you tripping while you were on ice? And he goes, yeah. Kind of like, was it Doc Ellis with Pittsburgh? who says he was on LSD the day he pitched the perfect game.
Oh, really?
This guy was on LSD while he was playing hockey.
Wow.
As a goaltender. Anyway, I want to move on. We got to get a lot in.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's keep flowing.
Okay, so that opened your eyes.
That opened my eyes to the fact that you can't trust what a journalist will write in an interview, because they'll ask you a bunch of questions, but then what you end up reading about is sometimes totally different.
Where is
I created my own platform, Modern Art Gonzo Journalism, to combat that. The fake news.
What I'm looking for, I got it. Is the Miami Herald, October 25th, 2005.
Yeah, they wrote an article.
Taken by storm, 4 dead in South Florida.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay.
That was a turning point in my life and my career.
This was the moment.
That was when I went from being a elected official. I was in charge of the safety and well-being of the 1,500 residents in that building. Okay. Turns out they were the largest constituency. So it turns out that constituency are taxpayers and voters, so it's very important. Anyway, I didn't realize that I was stepping into a power position, and then the bribes came, and I realized that the moment that you take a bribe, they own you.
Oh, yeah.
And I realized how corrupt government is. And even if you're a good guy and you try to be in that game, it's a very dangerous game, because they